they kept trying to like argue with me, and I was just like, bro, bro.
They say every generation gets one celebrity meltdown so unhinged it resets the internet, and congratulations, this one just punched its ticket, because when Chrisean Rock decided to speak. She didn't whisper, she didn't hint, and she definitely didn't filter. She detonated. This wasn't a casual rant or a misunderstood tweet. This was a scorched earth, no survivors. If I'm going down. Everybody's coming with me moment that made the Kardashians look like they're hosting a knitting. Circle dot out. Of nowhere, names started flying, timelines got ugly, and suddenly Keke Palmer and Blueface were dragged straight into the blast radius. And not in a subtle way. In a way that had fans refreshing pages like it was Black Friday and the truth was on sale for 90% off, screenshots appeared, reactions spiraled, and the internet collectively said, "Wait, what did she just say? This didn't feel planned." It felt emotional, messy, dangerous, like someone finally cracked open a door everyone else pretended didn't exist. And once that door opened, there was no closing it. Buckle up. Because what you're about to hear didn't just shake timelines. It rewrote reputations. Nobody wakes up planning to nuke their entire timeline. But that's exactly what happened the moment Chrisean Rock decided she was done playing nice. There was no teaser trailer, no warning tweet, no PR-approved build-up. Just raw, unfiltered chaos hitting the internet like a drunk wrecking ball with Wi-Fi. 1 minute the timeline was arguing about something forgettable, and the next, names were flying so fast people thought their phones were glitching. This didn't feel like strategy. It felt like pressure finally snapping. Chrisean wasn't speaking. Like someone chasing attention. She sounded like someone who had been holding her breath for way too long and finally exhaled. The tone wasn't playful. It wasn't vague. It was sharp, irritated, and dangerously specific. That's the kind of energy that makes people stop scrolling, because randomness can be ignored. But intention can't. The shock came from how casually she dropped it. No dramatic build-up, no long explanation, just straight to the point. Like everyone already knew, and she was late to her own breaking point. And that's when the internet collectively leaned forward. Because when someone stops explaining and starts stating, things usually get real. At first, fans assumed this was just another messy chapter in the never-ending chaos orbiting Blueface. That was the safe assumption, comfortable, familiar. But then the story took a hard left turn, because suddenly this wasn't just about a toxic relationship or recycled drama. This was about behind-the-scenes behavior, quiet alliances, and uncomfortable interactions that, in hindsight, didn't sit right. Chrisean didn't frame herself as innocent. She framed herself as aware. That distinction matters. She wasn't begging for sympathy. She was explaining dynamics, power, manipulation dressed up as concern. Moments that felt off but were brushed aside because everyone involved had fame, money, and a carefully curated public image. And then came the name nobody expected to hear in that context. Keke Palmer. The internet froze for half a second. Because Keke Palmer isn't supposed to be in stories like this. She's the relatable one, the unproblematic one. The celebrity people use as an example when they say, see. Not everyone in Hollywood is messy. So when Chrisean's words even brushed against that image, it felt like someone spilling wine on a white couch. What made it worse wasn't accusation, it was implication. Chrisean didn't scream wrongdoing, she described situations, energy, conversations that didn't feel supportive, even if they looked polite on camera. And that's the most dangerous kind of claim, because you can deny events, but you can't easily deny vibes. Especially when viewers start replaying clips and suddenly noticing things they ignored before. That's when the timeline turned investigative, old interviews resurfaced, smiles were re-examined. Jokes that once seemed harmless suddenly felt loaded. Fans started asking uncomfortable questions, and once those questions exist, they don't go away quietly. The Blueface portion of the story hit harder because it wasn't new, it was reframed. Chrisean described a cycle that didn't just damage, Her emotionally but benefited someone else strategically. Chaos created attention. Attention created relevance. Relevance created leverage. Suddenly, moments fans once saw as just drama looked more like patterns. And here's where the tone shifted completely. This wasn't about who cheated, who yelled, or who embarrassed who on Instagram live. This was about control masquerading as care. About public humiliation framed as entertainment. About someone being pushed into the role of the crazy one while everyone else got to keep their image clean. The internet hates being tricked. And this story felt like a long con finally being exposed. That's why reactions were so immediate. Comment sections exploded. People weren't even arguing yet, they were processing. Because when a narrative you've accepted for years suddenly cracks, your brain has to catch up. What made Chrisean's claims hit harder was her refusal to soften them. She didn't say maybe. She didn't say allegedly every 5 seconds. She spoke like someone recounting memories she's already replayed 1,000 times. That kind of confidence doesn't automatically mean truth, but it demands attention. Silence from the other side only fueled the fire. No quick denial, no clarification, no carefully worded Instagram story. Just nothing, and an internet logic. Silence is guilt's favorite ringtone. Fans assumed lawyers were already involved, which only added weight to every word Chrisean had said. Within hours, this wasn't a rant anymore. It was a developing story. Media pages picked it up. Reaction channels jumped in. Even people who claimed they were tired of Chrisean drama suddenly had opinions, because this story wasn't about her behavior. It was about everyone else's. The most uncomfortable part was realizing how believable it sounded. Not proven, not verified, but believable in the way that comes from patterns lining up. The way old clips suddenly made sense. The way silence felt loud. The way nobody rushed to laugh it off. By the end of the night, the internet wasn't asking if Chrisean was lying. They were asking why this took so long to come out. And that question is always the most dangerous one, because it flips the burden completely. This was no longer about one woman losing control online. This was about a narrative cracking open. And once that crack appears, everything that follows is just pressure looking for an exit. Once the story escaped Chrisean's mouth, it stopped belonging to her. That's the part nobody ever prepares for. The internet didn't just listen, it grabbed the narrative by the collar and shook it until every loose detail fell out. What started as a single eruption turned into a full-blown cultural investigation, complete with amateur detectives, half-baked theories, and confidence levels that absolutely did not match the evidence. The first wave was disbelief, not denial, disbelief. People weren't saying, "This is fake." They were saying, "This is too wild to be real." And historically, that sentence has a terrible track record, because every time we say it, the next week proves we were being optimistic. Suddenly, everyone was revisiting old content like it was a crime scene that had been hiding in plain sight. Clips involving Keke were paused, zoomed, slowed down, and psychoanalyzed frame by frame. Smiles were called strategic. Silence was called suspicious. Neutral expressions were suddenly treated like confession tapes. And while that might sound unfair, that's how public perception works. When an image cracks, people don't need proof. They need plausibility. What made it worse was how quiet things stayed. No firm denial. No statement clearing the air. Just vague posts floating around the timeline like emotional smoke signals. And the internet hates vagueness. Vague statements are basically gasoline. The moment someone posts about protecting their peace, the comments translated to "I can't talk because lawyers exist." Meanwhile, the Blueface angle detonated its own separate storm. Fans weren't shocked by accusations, they were shocked by framing. This wasn't presented as chaotic love anymore. It was described as a system, a loop where humiliation fed relevance, relevance fed money, and money fed control. Suddenly, moments people once laughed at started looking uncomfortable in hindsight. The memes arrived next, because humor is how the internet processes discomfort. Jokes flew everywhere. Some were brutal, some were clever, some were wildly inappropriate. But behind every meme was a shared acknowledgement that something felt off. Memes don't go viral unless they tap into a collective feeling, and this feeling was suspicion mixed with exhaustion. TikTok creators treated the situation like a Netflix docuseries that dropped without warning. Threads grew longer, timelines got messier. People started saying things like, "I always felt weird about this," which is internet code for "I didn't have proof, but my intuition was screaming." Once intuition gets validated socially, it turns into conviction real fast. Chrisean didn't retreat during this phase. She adjusted, clarified certain points without softening the overall message. That's a risky move because it keeps the conversation alive, but it also makes it harder to dismiss her as impulsive. Each clarification sounded less like backtracking and more like sharpening the knife. What really escalated things was celebrity reaction culture, not direct responses, but reactions to reactions. Someone liked the wrong post. Someone unfollowed someone else. Someone posted a quote about truth always coming to light, and suddenly that quote became a headline. In scandal economics, even neutrality gets monetized. Comparisons started flying. People said this made old Hollywood scandals look quaint. Others joked that this was reality TV without the release forms. Some even said it felt like watching a friendly neighbor slowly reveal they've been running an underground operation the whole time. The whiplash between public image and alleged behavior was the real draw. And then came the outrage crowd, the people who weren't here for entertainment. They wanted accountability. They wanted explanations. They wanted statements yesterday. These weren't fans, they were watchdogs, and they flooded comment sections demanding clarity like they were owed answers personally. The most dangerous part of this phase was how fast speculation hardened into belief. The longer silence stretched, the more people filled in the gaps themselves. And once a narrative settles into public consciousness, facts don't remove it, they just negotiate with it. Some supporters tried to shut it down, arguing that Chrisean's past made her unreliable. But that argument collapsed under its own weight, because discrediting someone based on chaos doesn't erase patterns described by that chaos. If anything, it raised a darker question. What if her instability wasn't random, but cultivated? That idea scared people, because it reframed everything. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about whether she was exaggerating. It was about whether the industry had benefited from her unraveling. And that question makes everyone uncomfortable, because the answer implicates viewers to doubt by now. This scandal wasn't trending because of shock value alone. It was trending because it touched something deeper: power dynamics, image management. Who gets protected and who gets labeled difficult? The internet loves drama, but it loves exposing systems even more. The comparisons got wilder. People joked this made other celebrity feuds look like group chats arguing over pizza toppings. Others said it felt like watching the nice kid in class get accused of something nobody expected. The unpredictability was the hook, and unpredictability is algorithm gold. Still, no official shutdown came, no definitive "this is false," no receipts released to kill the narrative, just ongoing noise. And noise unchecked becomes the leaf. By the end of this phase, the question wasn't whether this story would have consequences. It was who would take the biggest hit. Reputations were already dented. Trust was already shaken, and the internet had already decided this wasn't over. Because scandals don't die when people stop talking. They die when answers arrive. And at this point, answers were nowhere in sight. By the time the noise slowed down, the damage was already permanent. That's the thing about scandals like this. They don't need confirmation to leave scars. They just need enough belief to make people hesitate. And hesitation is deadly in an industry built on trust, likability, and image control. Once doubt enters the chat, it never leaves quietly. For Chrisean Rock, the aftermath wasn't relief, it was exposure fatigue. When you finally say what you've been holding in, people assume you feel lighter. In reality, you just traded silence for scrutiny. every word she had spoken was now being replayed, dissected, and interpreted by strangers who had never met her but felt entitled to judge her tone, timing, and mental state. Supporters rallied, but even support came with conditions. People said they believed her, but only to a point. They validated her pain, but not always her delivery. That's the unspoken rule for women who speak out loudly. You're allowed to be hurt, but only if you're polite about it. Chrisean didn't follow that rule, and the internet punished her accordingly. At the same time, something shifted. She was no longer being discussed purely as entertainment. Conversations turned heavier. People started asking whether her public breakdowns were symptoms instead of spectacles. That question alone changed how her past was viewed. Moments once mocked now felt uncomfortable. Laughter aged poorly overnight. For Blueface, the consequences came quietly, which somehow made them louder. There wasn't a dramatic cancellation, no immediate fallout announcement, just a slow erosion of benefit of the doubt. Fans didn't rush to defend him anymore. They paused. And pausing is the first step toward disengagement. Old clips resurfaced again, but this time without humor. Interviews that once felt playful now felt tense. Interactions that were brushed off as just their dynamics started looking like warning signs everyone ignored. The narrative shifted from chaotic couple to calculated cycle, and that shift is hard to undo. Brand-wise, nothing scares companies more than unpredictability paired with controversy. You can survive one. Together, they're toxic. Even without statements, the association alone became risky. Silence didn't clear his name. It suspended judgment, which in many cases is worse. And then there was Keke Palmer, the most unexpected name caught in the blast radius. Her situation was different, but arguably more fragile, because her brand isn't built on chaos or controversy. It's built on trust, relatability, being the safe choice. And once someone's name is linked to discomfort, even indirectly, the shine dulls. The public reaction wasn't outrage, it was confusion. People didn't want to believe anything negative. That resistance actually prolonged the conversation. Fans argued harder, defenders got louder, skeptics got more suspicious, and in the middle of it all was silence. Not guilt-confirming silence, but strategic silence, the kind that lets the storm pass instead of fighting it. But storms don't pass cleanly, they leave debris. And now, even neutral audiences carried a question mark. That's all it takes. A question mark is enough to complicate future headlines, interviews, and public moments. It doesn't accuse, it lingers. What made this aftermath especially unsettling was how familiar it felt. People started drawing parallels to past industry situations where someone labeled difficult Spock appears later, only for everyone to admit they ignored the signs. That comparison haunted the conversation, because nobody wants to be on the wrong side of hindsight. Public perception doesn't flip overnight. It tilts slowly, subtly, one less enthusiastic cheer, one more raised eyebrow, one more comment asking, "Did anyone ever address this?" That's how reputations erode, not through explosions, but through erosion. The internet eventually moved on, because it always does. A new scandal replaced this one. A new headline stole attention. But this story didn't disappear. It settled into the background like unfinished business, the kind people reference months later when something else goes wrong. And that's the real consequence here. This wasn't closure. This was a bookmark. The narrative didn't end, it paused. Any future incident involving these names will now be filtered through this moment. Context has been permanently altered. Chrisean may never get full validation. Blueface may never fully escape the pattern label. Keke may never need to respond. But her image will forever carry a footnote, not because of proof, but because of possibility. That's the power of moments like this. They don't convict, they complicate. And complication is enough to change careers, relationships, and public trust. The scariest part is knowing this probably isn't the final chapter. Stories like this rarely resolve cleanly. They resurface. They connect to new information. They get reinterpreted when someone else speaks up. And when that happens, everyone will remember this moment. The night Chrisean went nuclear. The night the internet stopped laughing and started questioning. The night a narrative cracked just enough to let doubt crawl in. Because in celebrity culture, the truth doesn't always come out all at once. Sometimes it leaks, sometimes it screams, and sometimes it waits patiently for the next scandal to remind everyone it was never really gone. And now that you've made it this far, don't act brand new. You didn't click this video by accident. You stayed because something here felt real, uncomfortable, and way too familiar. If this story had you pausing, rewinding, or side-eyeing your screen like nah, wait, then congratulations, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. So do me a favor and smash that like button like it owes you money, because the algorithm only respects chaos and commitment. If you've got an opinion, and I know you do, drop it in the comments. Team Truth, Team Skepticism, Team Everybody in Hollywood is weird, let's hear it. This comment section isn't a courtroom, it's a battleground. And silence is not an option. If you're new here, understand this clearly. Scandals don't take days off on this channel. We don't wait for press releases. We don't wait for apologies. We break down the mess while it's still hot, still raw, and still making people uncomfortable. And if that's your kind of energy, hit that subscribe button immediately before the next story drops and you miss it. Turn on notifications too, because the moment someone sneezes wrong, unfollows someone else, or posts a suspicious quote about growth, we're already on it. While other channels play it safe, we read between the lines, zoom in on the patterns, and say the quiet part led. Remember, today's rumor is tomorrow's how did we not see this coming? And when the next chapter hits, when someone finally responds, denies, or slips up, you'll want to be right here watching it unfold in real time. Stay loud, stay curious, stay messy. This is Celeb Ruckus, where the truth doesn't whisper. It crashes through the door.